Welcome to Cybrary. I am Raymond Evans and I will be your subject matter expert for Cybrary's Web App Penetration Testing course. In this video we will be discussing SQL injection. So what will be covered? What is SQL injection, how it works, some types, and some examples. So what is a SQL inject? Well, a SQL inject is a code injection attack which takes advantage of improperly filtered user input to enumerate and manipulate a database. What exactly does that mean though? Well, an attacker can use a statement to send commands to a SQL database and get information back from it. An attacker can also use this statement to manipulate data on the database as well, such as doing things like dumping an entire database. The two types of SQL injections we will be covering are classic SQL injections, or SQLI, and blind SQL injections, or blind SQLI. I'm going to be interchanging SQL inject and SQLI throughout this course because that's how you will see it in the real world. You'll see both of those terms used. So it's a classic SQL injection. Well, this type of injection occurs when escape characters are improperly filtered. An escape character is something like a single or a double quote, and these are used to denote the end of something and then the beginning of a series of commands. A SQL injection command is then sent to the SQL application and the results are immediately displayed to the attacker. Classic SQL injections utilize where clause modification and union operator injections to exploit the improper filtering. The where and union modifications you will be seeing later on. I will be explaining them further. Blind SQL injection is a form of SQL injection with the same exact thing as normal SQL injection, except the attacker isn't able to immediately see the results. For a web application that needs tested for blind SQL injection, it's best to use an automated tool, such as one of the tools listed below. Or, if you want, you can also craft a statement with a SQL inject to do something like create a user account or add some kind of data to the database. If this works, then you know that it's vulnerable to a blind SQL inject. So the individual can't perform a SQL inject and get data immediately back. However, they can perform a blind SQL inject to do something like dump the database or add a user account for themselves to gain access. Where would you exactly inject though? Well, SQL injections can be placed in various portions of a web page and the source code of the page itself as well. However, the two most common areas you will find them are in the URL and in form fields. And here we see a couple examples of those attacks in those different fields. In the URL here, we see on the first one it uses a single escape character to try to discover if a SQL injection is possible. Same thing with the second one, it's using escape characters to try to get a SQL error back. And the third one here, it actually uses a 1 = 1 statement. And this would be used to try to get data. Same thing with in the form field here, you are telling it that you're looking for anything, any username that has 1 or any username that is true. So it'll dump out all the user names to you because hey, all the usernames are true in fact. So why exactly is this dangerous? Well, if a website is vulnerable to a SQL injection, the site may disclose a lot of sensitive information. Stuff like credit card data, social security numbers, addresses, username, and passwords. This data can be used to steal identities and money, or it can be used to con victims over a long period of time. In the case of usernames and passwords, this can be used to get admin credentials and elevate their privileges on a system as well. So that's another reason why it's really, really dangerous, is because of privilege escalation. If something like this goes unchecked for years upon years, an attacker can just sit back and siphon off data, and just steal credit cards and social security numbers for many, many years. If it's left unchecked and if there's nothing set up like an IDS or an IPS to identify these type of attacks. So here's a couple of examples of SQL injections. So in our first one here, we see that 1 = 1 statement again. So this query is recognized as true and will dump the database onto the screen. This is one of the most common examples that you will see, and it's amazing how much this works. Now, you can trick a system even if it's filtering the classic 1 equals 1, because as long as any variables are in there whatsoever, it will do this. So you could do Tim or Bob equals Bob. As long as that statement and the second portion is equal and correct, it'll dump the database for you. So that's something to watch out for. You know, if you say, oh, hey, it's cool, we got the classic 1 equals 1 filtered. Well, do you have banana equals banana or dog equals dog? I don't think so. And then next we have an example which is asking to display every column from every table where the ID equals 1, which would display the entire database. This type of statement can be used to refine your search even further. So here we see select star from star where ID equals 1. Now, those star spots there can be used to refine your searches. So that star represents a variable for everything. So you're saying select everything from everything where ID equals 1. So you could say something like select usernames or users, if you know the table is called users, from customer where ID equals Frank, and you would get a list of everybody named Frank from that database. Next, we see an example of how to modify something on the table. And what we're doing is saying select everything from everything where ID equals 1, and then it says drop table everything. If your database was vulnerable to SQL injections and somebody was to put this in there, it could and would drop your tables, which is really bad because it would be deleting your database. Our final example here, this statement below uses a SQL post injection to refine its attacks even more. So it's showing, like above, select a variable from a variable where type ID equals 1, and then it uses a union all select statement to define it even further. This type of SQL post injection will most likely be used with a program such as SQL Map, which we will be showing later on, and I will be demonstrating later on how to create a more refined search with this string here. Right now it seems like a lot of garbage to you, but once we actually practice it and show how it's used, it'll make a lot more sense. So what are some real world examples of SQL injections being used and impacting people? Well, in 2008, the Sexual and Violent Offenders Registry of Oklahoma had 10,597 social security numbers belonging to sexual offenders stolen via SQL inject. In 2002, Guess.com was vulnerable to a SQL injection attack, permitting anybody who can construct a properly crafted URL to pull down 200,000 plus names, credit card numbers, and expiration dates in the site's customer database. And then in 2011, Lulzsec was accused of using SQL injection to steal coupons, download keys, and passwords that were stored in plain text on Sony's website. So for the Guess.com vulnerability, the SQL injection vulnerability that was there was one of the 1 equals 1 statements that you had seen in the URL itself. So that's one example of where that was used. And as for the 2011 Lulzsec attack, you should never store anything that's sensitive in plain text ever anywhere. So what was covered? Well, I talked about what a SQL inject is, showed a couple of examples, talked about how it works, talked about some types of SQL injections, and then gave you some real world examples. Happy hacking, everyone.